From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas and Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I sit down with Cate and Topher DeRosia, and we talk about one of the most community-oriented ventures I know in the WordPress space called HeroPress. So grab a drink, sit down, and relax, and enjoy the conversation we had. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. Today I'm here with Cate and Topher DeRosia of HeroPress. How are you guys today?
We're doing great, Rob. Thanks.
Doing really well.
I'm glad. One of the things I thought we'd talk about is HeroPress, but before we get into HeroPress, I'd like to hear both of your WordPress origin stories. So let's start with Cate. How'd you get into WordPress, Cate?
Oh, that's such a funny question. So I used it a little bit when the girls were really young and realized I liked writing more than I liked spending time with my kids, and decided I really should spend time with my kids. So that all kind of went on the back burner. I homeschooled them all the way through. And as we were getting towards the end, I realized that if I didn't figure something out, I was going to be doing nothing all day long while Topher finished work, and I felt like I had a little bit more to give to life than that. And he was already deeply involved in WordPress. We had been involved as volunteers, like at our local WordCamp. And so I thought, hey, WordPress, I'll take a look around. And I've spent probably the last 7 years kind of wandering around in the community, looking for different ways for someone who's a writer and an editor and a soft business skills kind of person to find their place. Because I knew I didn't want to develop. I don't have the training for design. And it's been a really interesting journey. What I've found is that I like community engagement. And so just recently, first of the year, I joined Automatic as a paid contributor on the community team. So I now get to spend my entire day doing community stuff, and it's really fun. It's everything from paperwork to help make a meetup happen to, talking to new organizers or doing, things like podcasts. I'm going to still get to do some writing. And then I'm also lead organizer of WordCamp US, and we just had our kickoff call today. So that was really invigorating.
That's amazing. And as I was saying before we went to record, it's great for the community having you up at Automatic. So congratulations for that, Cate.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. As I told you then, it was kind of a spooky move. I wasn't sure if that would be the right fit for me. And it's been a hit from from day one. We have a really amazing team, and really community focused, even though it doesn't always look like it at times. And so much headway, or so much opportunity, so many resources to do real good in the community. I'm really excited.
And Topher, how did you get into WordPress, and how did that come about?
Oh,
well,
boy.
When he was a young warthog.
When WordPress first came out, I took a look at it and thought, I could build this. And so I did. I actually built my own blogging platform, and I used it for maybe 12 years.
Yeah.
But I built it in 4 weeks, and it never progressed beyond that. So it never became what WordPress became by far. And throughout the first decade of the 21st century, I was building custom sites with PHP and MySQL, rebuilding admin areas over and over again, and it was getting really old. And so in 2010, somebody asked me to do a WordPress site, and it was like 2.9.
Yep.
And it was okay. It was a little frustrating. I really enjoyed the admin area. And then 3.0 came out with custom post types. and it was the answer to everything that I had wanted in WordPress. And I jumped in both feet, and I haven't built a site without WordPress since, I don't think. I quit my day job and became a freelancer, and then I did a startup and worked at a handful of agencies over the years, and just been doing WordPress ever since.
It's funny, many of us, Topher, got into it not professionally originally. I mean, I was the same way. I often tell the story where I started a website because I registered a domain because my late uncle used to say I change email addresses more than a lady changed her underwear. And so I registered a domain so I could get domain email, and then I got fed up with family bugging me. I was very much in the technical scene before I started working for myself. And I created a website so I could post resources so people would stop calling me on the phone. And that static website merged into WordPress. And, 16 years later, here I am. So we've all started non-professionally, so to speak. So,
yeah.
What I wanted to talk about today was HeroPress, and I really think anybody who doesn't know HeroPress or is new in the community should get to know HeroPress, first of all. I think it's a great resource. How did HeroPress come to be?
Kate, do you want to tell her, or do you want me to?
Well, I'll start a little bit. So Topher was at, and then he can clear up what I get wrong. He was at XWP. And they had just gone to WordCamp San Francisco. I think the last WordCamp San Francisco. And they had a house together. It was kind of the first time they were all together because XWP is out of Australia. Everybody's completely distributed. So he got to meet his boss for the first time, or like the owner for the first time, and then, his team. And they just got into some deep conversations about what Topher's ideal job would be. And his ideal job has always been helping people. I mean, that's how he got into WordPress, or, got into development at all. And from there, it turned into quite the fantastical ride. And I'll let Topher take over from there.
Yeah. One day, a few days before Thanksgiving, I got an email from Dave Rosen, the owner, and it just said, "You're not going to be working for XWP anymore. I want you to build something great for WordPress." And that was it. That was all that was in the email.
It was exciting.
It was.
That sounds like a challenge beyond belief.
Yeah.
Actually.
Well, and part of the thing that we don't usually say in these conversations, until very recently, we were a single income family. So Topher's job changing was pretty big for all of us.
Yeah. And I've heard you say that on social media before, that you were a single income family. Mm-hmm. I've heard you stress that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important.
So I asked him what it was, and he said, "That's your journey to discover."
Oh, wow.
And so, he was thinking a business of some kind. But I got talking with a developer in India, and he had some questions, some struggles, and he asked me, and I don't have an answer. So I went looking, and I found some other Indians who had the answers and connected them. And then I thought, hey, what if what we did is connect people? At the time, I was thinking, I was using the word the fringe of WordPress, not North America, not Europe, not Australia. People who have a hard time getting to WordCamp easily, that sort of thing. I don't want to be the great white savior with all the answers. But if I can find somebody else, one of their neighbors, if I can help them find that person who has the answer, well, that's going to be a great service. And so it was originally going to be video, like TED.
Yep.
And we were going to travel the world, and we would do 3 to 5 per year. And, we'd have a camera crew and all that kind of stuff. So we did a Kickstarter, and it jumped off the line. We got like $20,000 in 4 days, and it was awesome. And then it just fiddled out. That was it. And the project, that was its first death. That's when the project died for the first time.
The first time? Oh.
Yeah. So part of the deal was that if HeroPress didn't work out, then we all just walk away, and I didn't have a job anymore.
Yes.
But I started getting emails from people saying, HeroPress is a really cool idea. We really need this. You can't let it go. And I thought, well, I'm now unemployed. I'm not traveling the world with a camera crew. So I thought about how I could make it cheaper, faster, more accessible, and text immediately came to mind. Mm-hmm. There's limited editing. The contributors create the post themselves. Text is easier to consume on 3G bandwidth and stuff like that in the places that really needed it.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, still. So I went to Andrei Savchenko, Rarst, who is right now in Kyiv. And he was going to be one of the video people. And I said, would you do a text post instead? And he said, oh, sure. And so he did it, and I posted it, and it was a raging success. And I've been doing it almost weekly ever since. It's been 7 years now.
Oh, wow. And you said he's in Kyiv, Ukraine, I assume?
Yeah.
And we I have to take him in and say at the time of this recording, we're all kind of thinking about the people over in Ukraine with the mess of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. He woke up yesterday morning hearing explosions from his house.
I can tell you, not to digress, but the post status Slack yesterday was all about the mess in the Ukraine. So it was pretty. There's a lot of concerned people, and we have a lot of people in our community that live over in that part of the world. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Automatic was too. They a lot of people offering refuge if they needed to get out, and just a lot of what can we do, how can we help kind of conversations. So
yeah, it's a lot of hard conversations. Yeah, yeah. So you built HeroPress, and that started off with one website.
Yep.
And now you have several websites.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. It was just the one for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And last spring, we started having discussions about having Kate work on it full time. Mm-hmm. But she very wisely thought that we should be offering more than just HeroPress.
Yeah, and it was a little different than that, or like alongside that is we've always been really careful to protect the integrity of what HeroPress is. Yes. And if we're doing for a long-term project, you have to have some kind of financial support for it, which has always been us. And we've had community involvement at times when we've needed it. But if we really want to do more with it, we've got to have something that makes sense for people to put money behind, but also in a way that continues our mission of supporting, I guess I want to say the least among us, making it as accessible for the newest, poorest person as it is for the richest, most, easily abled person.
Yeah, because it's always easy for the richest person to throw $30 at something, $40 at something. And for somebody that's financially strapped in a developing country, it's not always that easy. And I think what it comes down to, honestly, Kate, is inclusion. We talk a lot in our community, as you know, about diversity and that whole side of it. And diversity doesn't mean, I'm sorry, we have a group for females, a group for males, a group for Italians, a group, you know where I'm going. That's not diversity. Right. Diversity means welcoming people into your community with open arms and being there to support them.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers when you start talking about diversity, and it's important to look at all of them, even small business. Like there's a lot of things that can be sponsored in the, in the WordPress community. And it's really reasonable for people putting their time into these projects to get as much sponsorship as they can. But the big companies can easily sponsor things where small businesses, like teams of 1 to 3, even up to 10 sometimes, or different parts of the world, their dollars don't stretch quite as far. Yeah. And so even though we haven't necessarily built on it yet, that's kind of the target market we're looking for. But then there's also a reason that people doing these projects take large sponsorship, because you put a lot of effort into it. So, it's a weird balance to try to find. And we felt like building a lot of kind of self-supporting, like WP Podcasts is something that we can keep up and maintain with a fair minimal amount of effort. So creating a variety of websites like that benefit the community, but have sponsorship opportunities, allow us to go in with lower sponsorship costs, and help those smaller businesses.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned WP Podcasts, which is one of your newest offerings, which you started in late 2021. And I have to tell you, one of my favorite offerings, being a podcaster, there's a lot of podcasters in the WordPress space, and most people don't understand that.
Yeah, we didn't. We were amazed by the number of podcasters that we found that we had no idea were out there. It was, and I think that's one of the best parts about being involved, even in just, the original HeroPress, but the projects that have come out of it, is seeing all of these things that they're all out there. It's just getting us connected to them. That's such a challenge.
I would have guessed there were maybe 25 podcasts.
And how many did you come up with?
There are more than 70 on there now.
Yeah, I would assume. And I know some of them are strictly WordPress. I know I try and do a mix of WordPress and business. It depends, right? And I think they're all important. And it's about finding a voice that you resonate with. Yeah.
And you never know quite what that voice is going to be. Yep. And I think it's very, very important. It's, it's like the healthy bloodlines are, a mix. You don't want just WordPress, because then you're in that content silo. You're just you need to be hearing about how to run a business, how to work with the community, how to hire well. It has to be an and kind of approach.
What I'll tell you guys is that on my phone at the time of this record, I have 35 podcasts that I listen to as background when I'm working on a regular basis. I used to be an AM radio guy back in the 70s when I was growing up. So I was right. And so the transition from podcast to podcast, Topher, was easy for me. Like it really was. Yeah. And the other thing I really like, Topher, and I often share them in a LinkedIn group I co-manage with Courtney Robertson and other places, is your HeroPress tip of the week. How did that start?
Well, that was sort of in connection with the websites themselves. We made a wide variety of sites, but we wanted one place where everybody could find them. So we made a site called HeroPressNetwork.com. Yep. And then we thought, well, what else are we going to put on there? Are we going to start making content, or is it only going to be an aggregation of the other sites? And we decided to make some content, some blog posts and stuff like that. And I've always loved making videos, training videos. So at the beginning of 2022, I just started doing it once a week, just because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
We really did. A lot of people approach content creation as if everything has to be huge and brand new.
And perfect.
And perfect. Right. Yeah. And if you're looking for perfect, the HeroPress Network is not the place for you, because there is nothing perfect about the HeroPress Network. It is authentic, it is engaging, and it's imperfect. But we knew that life was busy and we are in a transition stage all the way around. And so we wanted to create things that could be as sustainable as possible with minimal amount of effort, because we think that these things actually help the community. And so we want to keep them going, but we also are realistic about the amount of time we have to invest in it. I enjoy writing. I'm a writer. I don't do a lot of blog posts on the HeroPress network right now because that's not something I have bandwidth for. We're going to be looking to branch out in that area, but right now that's on hold. But the tips of the week, those are pretty easy to put up. So we've got a mix of styles of content, and then, we've got a big audience. Like, we're really, we're doing the one thing nobody should really do with content, and we're trying to reach everybody. So that means we need to have a variety of different types of content so that everybody gets a little bit of something right now.
Yeah. And I think the key, even with video, is be authentic. Don't worry about down mixing it and editing it. I mean, I think some of that's personally not worth it. I mean, I've had podcasts in past when I've had animals, and a dog will show up in the middle of the podcast, and there'll be a bark or a meow of a cat jumping on a keyboard. And it's like, at the end of the day, I just kind of leave them there because I think it's more important to be authentic. And if we all look for perfection, we never get any content out anywhere. I mean,
right.
Well, and there's also an inclusion element to this. We want more people being out in public in the community. We want them participating, but not everybody has the resources to have, a great microphone or space where they can just be quiet by themselves. And so by allowing imperfection to be a normal, we allow more people to participate because they can just be comfortable and be themselves.
Yeah. I know on the HeroPress network, you guys have a post that says 2021 was a year of growth for HeroPress. You know which post I'm referring to as you talk away. What was your biggest takeaway where you grew, and what's the one thing you think you could have done better?
Oh, well, the thing I think we could have done better is I could have created more content. And it's, it's kind of funny to say, I really enjoy content creation. And I found getting through the pandemic that I didn't have the capacity, even if I had the time, I didn't have the capacity to be creative as much as I would have liked to have been. And I've talked to others who've had the same struggle. You just only have so much to give at a given time, and you have to work with that. But the growth was not even so much, there's the obvious growth of getting the different projects out the door, but it's more about figuring out what the future of HeroPress looks like, because that's a conversation we've been having for a really long time. Did Topher?
Yeah. Did we lose you?
Well, do you have an answer, Topher?
I do. I want to make sure Robert can hear us.
He's just muted at the moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, year of growth. We spent months in 2021 thinking about what we were going to do with HeroPress. And we considered a wide variety of options. We considered not doing it anymore.
Wow.
Just because, if you don't look around once in a while to see if people are still listening, you're going to miss it if you get to the point where they're not,
Yep.
So we looked at traffic, we looked at all kinds of things, and we looked at what we wanted to build and what we wanted to do and what we wanted to do with our life. We were talking before we started recording about how Kate and I are looking about to change our life. Leave our house to the girls and move on. Do we want to live in an RV and live on the road? Do we want to get an apartment? Do we want to move to Europe? Who knows? So even beyond HeroPress, it was a big year for us.
Yeah.
It is. And I think COVID has forced a lot of people to evaluate their lives in a big way.
And I think that's important. That's something that I try to do regularly. And I think it's, a positive to come out of COVID.
Yeah, I would say so too. I was sharing before. At time this record, I'm in the middle of a divorce. There's no hard feelings there. Things happen. And you kind of evaluate where you want to go. And even business-wise, you evaluate. I'm approaching 200 episodes in this podcast, and I've kind of sat down more than once and said, do I want to keep doing this? Is it still bringing value to people? And every time I have this discussion with people, I get don't stop doing it. And
Right.
it's kind of, it's interesting. And I was having a discussion with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I said, what do you like? And they said, oh, I like the interviews, but I also like the short tips that I throw out every week or two. So, it's surprising sometimes what people like and what they don't like until you go to your community and ask. You don't have any idea.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's interesting. And life, evolution, you got to do what's also fun for you. And, by that, I mean, I made a decision 3.5 years ago. I wasn't going to write any long form blog post, Kate. I write them for clients. I write them for other people. And I said, I'm not doing any more long form. I haven't written one long form blog post that's not a podcast on my blog in 3.5 years.
Yeah, and that's it. You're supposed to be enjoying what you're doing too. And if you continue doing something simply because it's what you have done, it's not good. Like it's not really as valuable as you think. And what idea might you be suppressing that would be even more helpful if you moved on to something else? So I don't think you should just wander around abandoning things at will, but the idea that you should be stuck with something for the next 20 years because you started it once that's ridiculous.
No, it's so true. Now, we've talked about the community before we went to record, and, you're up in Automatic in that role, Kate, as well. And I know, Topher, you're pretty community minded. And the problem with open source projects is you always get some people bent out of shape because they don't like where the community is going. And I always say to people, and maybe I'm different, but if you're really that concerned, get involved. Stop complaining. One of my favorite comments lately on Twitter has been when somebody says, I found a bug. I said, do you know how to open up a ticket to open up that bug? And do you know how to address that? And by the way, if you don't, I'll give you 4 developer advocates at different big companies who'd be glad to help you.
Right.
Like let's help ourselves. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and that's it. It's sometimes people just don't know what to do. Sometimes, we forget that people come a part of our diversity is that people come from very different backgrounds. Not everybody was taught how to handle, conflict well, or how to express themselves well, or maybe they weren't even encouraged to express their opinions well and or effectively, I should say. And so graciousness goes a long ways inside of a community. I know recently we had a big diversity conversation, which of course, but I have to say that that's turned into something really good. It's the people involved in the conversations began getting engaged. They had somebody help them find a way to get involved themselves. And so it was uncomfortable, but it adds richness to the rest of the community when it's handled the right way.
That conversation's kind of been everywhere. It's been on WP Tavern. It's been on, it was on WP Builds with Nathan Wrigley a week ago. I know it's been in Post Status. I know Courtney and I have that conversation pretty regularly because she works on elevating in the community. You work on elevating.
Yeah.
It happened with WordCamp Europe, where the discussion was the organizing community was not as diverse as it should have been. It's been kind of everywhere, hasn't it?
And I think what's important is that as uncomfortable as those conversations are, and maybe that wasn't started the right way, they're really very, very important. Like, you need those gut checks. It's so easy, particularly when you're involved in community and particularly when you're volunteering. It's hard to stretch outside of what's comfortable just because you have so limited resources to work with. And so if you don't have somebody helping you stretch, you'll just kind of stay in the same pattern that you're in. And so it is very important to have other people from the outside notice things and comment on them and be a good force for change. Because everybody working on these projects are volunteers largely. And they really care about diversity, or at least, I'd say probably 90%, 95%. Mm-hmm. And they're actively trying to do it. But again, we have limited resources. I don't know everybody. I can't, I just can't. I wish I could. And so, the more people that get involved, the more diverse and representative of the entire community that it is.
It's so true. And I actually think our community is doing a really good job in the long run handling that. I think we have work to do. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah.
But we're having the conversations. And if you can't have the conversation, then you can't work at it. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there. I mean, obviously, and again, it's the kind of thing that will always be a problem because our community is always growing and changing. Again, one of the best parts of open source is also one of the worst parts of open source, is everything always changes. But we are willing to stop and have the conversations. We're willing to try to do it better. We're willing to work to grow. And I think that's how Topher and I have managed to stay married as long as we have. Yeah. And it's what makes a healthy relationship is being willing to work to grow when it's important, or being willing to admit that you can't do that and walk away.
Yep. Yep. Topher, do you have anything you want to add to those thoughts, or?
Not a whole lot. Kate and I have discussed this a lot between each other, and we're very well aligned.
You guys are actually very in line with me, too, and the way I feel about this stuff. I think it's almost like we're in the same conversations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good. There's a lot more alignment than we think. It's easy for something to look different from the outside, but when you actually look at it from the inside or have the conversations about what was intended, there's a lot more conformity than we would realize.
Yeah. What other issues, since we're talking about community, do you two see in the HeroPress community that we could address and do better? Do you see anything?
Boy, that's a good one. I mean, one of our focuses in the HeroPress community is making sure that resources are easy to access for people. Yep. There is so much, and I'm actually finding this. I just went through orientation with Automatic, and I was amazed at the amount of resources that they have, particularly as someone who has been a lead organizer of a WordCamp twice that I didn't even know existed, and should have really. And there's so much of that out there in the community, and so looking for ways to take useful beginner level information and make it very obvious and available to new people coming in.
Yeah, I don't think even the people like ourselves who have been in this community a long time know of all the resources. And I'll give you an example of that. Before I took on the co-management of the LinkedIn group, learn.wordpress.org kind of fell off my chart a little bit. Not that I wasn't interested, it just kind of fell off. And working with Courtney Robertson so much, one thing her and I talk about is, because she's one of the learning leads, we talk about learn.wordpress.org a lot. So, and then doing some stuff and talking to Nick Diego a lot, who's over at WP Engine. He's involved in Learn as well, and several other people. So it's really hard for new people coming in. I don't like to use the word old timers, but experienced people don't. Yeah, I'm going to make us all sound old before it sounds. But as experienced people don't understand all the resources, how do the new people expect to get them?
Yeah, exactly. And, trying to figure out what to Google for to find it, or to even we've forgotten so many things that, other people don't even know exist, that, finding ways to just make that access to information easier. And it doesn't have to be free information. It can just be helping people find really good training regardless of what it costs, or, but just anything that helps people feel welcome and valued.
Yeah, I think those are two real keywords, Kate, is welcomed and valued. I think there's a lot of people who think if they say, I don't like something, that's going to go over bad. I don't think saying you don't like it is going to go over bad. It's all in the delivery.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's part of it. Like, if you don't like something, why? And what would you like us to do to help you? And how can we help you? And if you answered those questions, I think, there's enough people in our community that would be more receptive. I know, when I get stuck and I say, I'm stuck, somebody, point me somewhere. I don't seem to have that issue, but it's also a bit of a give and take too. You got to be willing to help the people who help you as well. So,
yeah, there's some misunderstanding, I think, as the community grows. So the people who started in the community knew what open source was.
Yep.
And they had a pretty deep, there's a strong reason why we're all in here, which is why we have strong feelings and why we have strong arguments sometimes. But the new people coming in, people like my mom, who would use WordPress because we use WordPress, but she's got other alternatives and different things, but she'd use WordPress. But she has no understanding of what an open source community is like and how it works. And so getting some more education around that, letting people know that you can ask questions, you can ask for things to change, you can use things this way, and this is how we work. Those kinds of things, it's almost like guidelines for the society, which isn't so much something you have to follow strictly, but it gives people a place to start. They have an understanding of how to interact and what's considered appropriate and what's not considered appropriate. And it just gives everybody kind of an even playing ground. It's the rules for football. It's the rules for any game that you play. It just gives you a place to start.
Topher, what's the one thing you'd like to see change in the community?
I would still like to see more global awareness. Mm-hmm. It was something I started stretching for with HeroPress, and it's something I've come to really enjoy and appreciate.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I'll feel like I know a lot of people in the WordPress community. If you go look at the HeroPress map and look at those pins, I know people all over the world. Yeah. And then I'll bump into somebody who has been a core contributor for 15 years, and I've never heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, how can we be in the same community, the same circles, for that long and never bump into somebody,
It's so true.
I'm in a lot of Slack. Like maybe 35.
Would you like to see mine?
But I tend to join geographically specific Slack channels. So I'm in the Nigerian one, the Australian one, the two Indian ones, and the WP Africa one. Because the people who tend to hang out on those Slacks, they don't necessarily go outside of those Slacks. So they don't come to the WordPress Make Slack or to my Slack. And so you walk into a whole new community and you're like, wow, there's 200 people here that I had no idea exist. And they're all making their living with WordPress, doing what I do. And I would love to figure out a way for everybody to be able to meet everybody.
I would agree with you. I was thinking as you were saying that, how many people I know in Western Europe and how many people I know in North America and how many people I know in Australia and Asia. And then how many people I don't know in places like South America or Africa. And that's interesting because I mean, Africa in a lot of spots is a developing continent or an underdeveloped continent. And I'm sure there's all kinds of people doing wonderful things.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but I really don't know anybody.
The Nigerian WordPress community is very robust.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of people doing really great stuff. And if I wasn't on their Slack channel, I wouldn't know that.
Now, part of it is, I think, some of those underdeveloped countries are not confident promoting themselves. And I think they need to, because I think there's some really good stuff going on. And I think one of the reasons why they don't promote themselves is they're afraid about inclusion and being welcomed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I learned from the diversity discussion that happened is that some people need to be invited in.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny about that is I should have known this because I'm somebody who needs to be invited in. I came into the tech world when I was barely out of college, not a technical person, and have felt kind of out of place my entire time. Even when I go almost to every WordCamp I go to, and I've been to so many of them, I still feel like an outsider every single time because it's just kind of my personality. And I realized that, if you're someone who's busy running a business, if you're new to the community, if you've just got your head down learning, it may not occur to you to get involved. You may not realize there's a place for you to get involved or how to get involved. And so when we were working on WordCamp US, we just put the organizing team together. We brainstormed and reached out to a number of people who were really excited to be involved, who really are going to add a ton to the project, and gave us a really diverse group of people, not just ethnically, but also from Canada and from Mexico, and, really bringing the continent together for the camp that just needed to be asked because they were busy doing other things. And so, part of opening that door wider is making sure that people know they're allowed to come in.
Yeah, and it's so true. I can even remember when I got involved with the Toronto WordPress meetup group, and this is going back over 10 years. A friend of mine reached out and said, "Why don't you come to a meeting?" And it's like, I don't want to bother. And even I'm an extrovert personified.
Right.
And I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people now have become like long-term friends, and and that's the amazing part about it all. It's the people we know, and the more I look at it, and I could be wrong, but I look at the people I know that have grown and gone on to like major companies in different types of roles, and it's hard to put a number on it some days. And one of the things I think that makes our community really special, and I've said this to many people over the years, is most people, and I use the word most because we all can find a few who are not, in this community are very approachable. And it doesn't matter if, like, I take somebody like a Brian Gardner, and I'm going to call Brian out because I've had him on this podcast. I go to events that he does. And for a guy that I consider somebody I've looked up to over the years who's done the world, he is one of the most humble and appreciative people in this community I know. And that's, some people would disagree with me, but I think Brian's really approachable. And
yeah, well, and you can't be friends with everybody. You can be a good person who's approachable and still not have a personality that you enjoy spending time with. We're people at the end of the day. Yeah. But I agree with you completely. I mean, I've had people, willing to help me with things that, would take time away from their very busy, very, prominent agency to help me get started in my small little things. It's a community of people who kind of remember where they came from and the help that they needed to get to where they are. And are really excited about helping the next person who comes along.
Yeah, I was thinking about a good friend of mine, and you guys all know Corey Miller over at PostStatus. And Corey founded iThemes back in the day, for those who don't know. And Corey's gone through his trials and tribulations with mental health lately. He's been very upfront and open about it. And I needed something, and I reached out to Corey. And despite everything going on in Corey's life, he got back to me.
Yeah.
And that's, people like that are the cornerstone of this community. And that matters. And what we need to do, I think we got to get to, is developing some younger talent in the community.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. The people coming into the community, it's split, and I don't have numbers to back this up because I'm not a numbers person. I'm a people person. But you're seeing a mix of people who are younger. So like our daughter, Sophie, is 20. She's not interested really in development or design, but she's very community oriented and has been looking at some different opportunities for herself. And And then there are people like me who are coming into the community as a second stage of life kind of job. A lot of people transitioning out of the jobs that they did have that they may have lost during the pandemic or may have realized they didn't want to have anymore during the pandemic and are transitioning into, a second career or a third career because WordPress is so accessible for them. So it's a kind of a split between bringing in young talent, but also nurturing older experienced people who might need, who are just coming at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, and Topher, I would think you being from an agency background, the problem with just young talent is they don't always have the business experience to go around with the design skills, and that's a bit of a problem.
It can be, but I don't know. In an agency with a fair number of people, let's say more than 10.
Yeah.
Your tasks are pretty siloed. You're not going to ask a developer to do sales or design. And honestly, that's a reason that a lot of freelancers turn their back on freelancing and go to an agency because they just want to do what they like to do and not mess with all that stuff. So people are I'm finding they're niching down more than they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you can. When I got into this business, there was one title for someone who worked on the internet, and it was webmaster. And they did everything.
I know that title.
But now, then it went to front end and back end, and now on the front end, there's a dozen different tasks that you can make a living at doing just that.
Yep.
If you're at an agency. I think people are having the opportunity to niche down more, and that allows young people to have more options to choose. It's not be a webmaster or not. It's get on the internet and do any of these 100 jobs.
It's true. It's true. I've got a 30-year-old son who's a work placement internship away from graduating college in marketing. Thank the pandemic for the 2-year delay on that one because nobody's doing internships. And he came to me last week and said, you know what I want to do? I want to start a WordPress blog. And I've been saying to him for a long time, maybe he should. So there's all kinds of people getting in for different reasons.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to point out is you can come in as a differently abled business professional and who can support WordPress businesses and have your own freelancing consulting career or, work in email marketing or, just you can do the things that you love with WordPress without necessarily being a WordPress person. And again, that's so healthy for our community.
So true. And that's what gives us different experiences. Like when we get in some of these, I know Post Status does like regular huddles where they get people together and we bat around the ideas. And there's many of that. There's a lot of, people at the pandemic that have created their own little Slack groups where they have 3 or 4 people they talk to every day and sort of shoot the business ideas around. And it's one of the few professions I know, truthfully, where you're actually talking to your competitors and you're working with your competitors
all the time
without giving up any secrets, right, Topher?
Yeah. I mean, co-opetition is a big deal in WordPress.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I was joking the other day. I must have friends at like 5 major hosting companies, and I know Liquid Web is a sponsor of you guys with your hosting, right? And I've got multiple friends at Liquid Web. I mean, multiple. And I've got multiple friends at GoDaddy. I've got multiple friends at WP Engine. I mean, take your pick. And, there's no resource. By the way, I don't use any of them. Except for Pagely. I have some clients on them, but I don't use them personally. And there's no animosity because I'm not there. They're just glad I'm in the community, and that's what matters at the end of the day, right? So
Yeah, we're all richer richer like brownies as opposed to richer like, billionaires. But that comes too sometimes. But we're just all richer when we work together because nobody's doing exactly the same thing. And even if somebody's doing exactly the same thing as you, they're not doing it the way you're doing it. And so the more we learn from each other, the more the entire community grows, and the healthier and more financially stable our community is, the healthier and more financially stable every business built on top of that is.
So true. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with two questions. The first question for both of you is, what would you like to see different with WordPress moving forward? Kate?
I'd like to see better conversations. I'd like to see an assumption of the positive. Still ask the questions, still have the conversations, but don't assume that people don't assume malice. It's err on the side of ignorance. That's what I'd love to see.
Topher, how would you like to answer that?
I'm going to try and not make this complicated.
It's okay.
I would like development to return to the simplicity that it was 2 years ago.
I'm smiling.
It's much, much harder, in my opinion, to walk into WordPress development now than it was when I did it.
I would agree. And then my second question for both of you is, what's the one thing you want to do with HeroPress this year? Kate?
I want to transition control of HeroPress over to somebody else. And it's probably going to be our daughter, Sophie. It's something we're talking about. It's something we set up when we started all of this. But that's my thing, is getting somebody who's not Topher and I managing the day-to-day parts of HeroPress.
It's time for the succession plan already, is it?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's admirable. Topher, what would you like?
I want to add to that a little bit. Then I have my own thing as well. Sure. We're not going to stop doing HeroPress stuff. Like, we're not walking away and giving it to someone. I'll probably always do the essays because I like it.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of stuff that happens that we can send, have somebody else do. But I would like to see each of the assets we've built continue to grow healthfully. Find It WP is struggling a little bit right now. We aren't getting as many submissions as I'd like. Okay. But WP Podcast is doing great.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the HeroPress Network is getting its content built out via the tip of the week. And I want to keep doing some blog posts occasionally. I would like to see it to continue to grow in a safe way.
That's really great.
Yeah, we knew when we set it up the way we did that there was going to be a flurry of activity, and then there was going to be a little bit of settling to see kind of what stuck to the wall, and then invest the resources that we have into either helping something that's struggling or fueling the fire behind something that's, more robust.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised that the podcasting side of it is doing well, because podcasting is all the rage right now. And there's a lot, I know from being in that community, there's a lot of concern over open podcast networks versus closed networks and all kinds of stuff. So I think it's a really good venue to kind of help and be part of it. And so I'm not surprised. And,
yeah, and on the other side with Find It WP, we knew that was a really ambitious project that was going to take a lot more time. It was going to be a slow grower, and we were going to have to figure some things out. Like, we didn't have all the answers when we launched it, but we didn't want to just leave the idea sitting, around collecting dust.
So true. Kate, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how is the best way?
Twitter. I'm generally a voracious Twitterer. So you can connect with me at My Sweet Kate. You can find me on Facebook, but really I'm pathetic at Facebook. So and LinkedIn. I'm there. I don't always chat a lot there, but I'm active on LinkedIn, and it's Cate DeRosia.
And Topher, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
I want to point out that Kate is with a C.
Oh yes,
it is.
Yes. Best way to find me Probably also Twitter, Topher1 Kenobi with a number 1 in the middle. I use that handle everywhere, though, so you can find me on a variety of Slacks. Facebook, LinkedIn.
You're not a Star Trek fan, a Star Wars fan, sorry.
Places.
All the places. Thanks, guys, for a great conversation. Have a wonderful day, both of you.
Hey, thanks. This was really great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. A very special thank you to Cate and Topher for joining me on today's podcast. Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing. For more information about Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. From here, you can connect to us on social media, go to our website, and even go to the podcast to subscribe. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.